I'm your host, Johnny Aaron, and let me introduce my guest, Kim Ketterman.
Hello.
And tell the audience what you do.
I'm a certified college funding advisor with College Funding Solutions. Basically, I help parents get financial aid for their high school students going off to college.
Okay. So what kinds of different financial aids are available for college?
Well, there's many different types of financial aid. There's need-based financial aid, which is based on need. There's merit-based financial aid, which is based on merit, grades, SAT, ACT scores. And there's athletic scholarships a lot of times, or even federal or state loans.
Okay, so which is the most common out of those?
Most common? Well, the most money out there is actually in federal loans. That's probably makes the bulk of financial aid, but at the same time, I'd say 90% of the financial aid is based on the federal money, the state money, the private institutions, basically the colleges that you could attend also have free money to give out. And then there's also, private scholarships and things like that.
Huh. So most of the money comes from the government for the
I would
aid?
say a good portion comes from the federal government, and then another portion from the state government. Especially in California, there's something called Cal Grants, which are free money. It could be up to $9,700 in free money for students. Some of those, a little merit is included. You have to have a 3.0 GPA to get a Cal Grant A, which is up to $9,700.
So which is the most common for people to get an aid? Is it need-based, the most money received?
I would say it's a combination. Well, every financial aid package is made up of three things. It's going to be made up of gift aid. It's going to be made up of self-help aid, which is usually work on campus and loans. So it usually encompasses the whole thing. I would say need-based financial aid is very, it's based on need. Merit-based, you have to fall in the top 25% of the incoming class at any university. And that's just going to be all free money. Need-based financial aid is a combination of free money, work on campus, and loans. Merit-based is usually just free money.
So the work on campus and loans, do those make up the bulk of the need-based, or do they give a lot of free money, or?
It actually depends on each school. Each school's statistics are going to be a little bit different. For example, NYU, their statistics are they meet a certain percentage of need. Let's use theirs for example, or let's use a UC school. Usually UC schools meet 95 to 100% of need. They meet 50% in gift aid, 50% in self-help. So 50% of the money is free money, 50% of it is work on campus and loans. But there's private schools out there that meet 70, 80, even up to 85% in free money. So those statistics used to be published. You used to be able to go and pick them up. Now they're no longer published, so they're a little harder to come by. But those are some statistics you probably would want to know before you apply to a school. How much free money are you going to get? How much work on campus? How much loans? I mean, you don't want to go to school that's only going to give you loans.
So how does the loan work? Is it a high interest rate, or what?
Usually they're pretty low. It depends. You can get a Stafford loan, which is a student loan, or a PLUS loan, which is a parent's loan. The interest rate last year was an all-time low for both of them. So, but again, with the Stafford loan being a student loan, sometimes you can get a subsidized loan, meaning the government pays the interest the entire time the child is in school, plus 6 months afterwards, a little bit of a grace period. Or there's the unsubsidized loans, which the interest starts to accrue as soon as you take out the loan.
So, all right, so so it's not a situation like you become a doctor and you work and you're in school for 8 years, and then when you get out you have to work your whole life to pay off the loan. It's not that bad?
Well, it depends on how much you take the loan out for. If you take out the loan, you can take out a PLUS loan, for example. It's a parent loan for the entire cost of a college education. Usually that can be some of the worst ways to pay for college, because you don't want to go out and just take a loan out to pay for the whole thing. Then you might be paying it off for quite some time afterwards. Student loans, they're usually pretty good. I mean, you pay a certain portion each month after you get out of school, but usually you're not working just to pay off that loan. It's a smaller percentage.
And besides free money and the loan, what was the other one you mentioned?
Work on campus?
Well, can you describe that?
Work on campus is basically a grant, which is free money. The government gives the colleges a certain portion of money to hand out to the students. For example, you could get a $2,000 in free money. It's not necessarily free money because you do have to have a job there on campus. It's usually clerical, you're usually working in an office. It's not digging ditches or planting trees or anything like that. But it's a great way for the student to pay for a portion of their education. Because if they had a regular job, they're out there working, that money they earn a lot of times can get counted against them. Any money they make over $2,300 is going to count against them. Basically, every dollar you make over that, you get 50 cents less in financial aid. So working on campus, you help to pay for part of your college education, but it's not hurting your financial aid.
I see. So, but do they give high wages on the in the jobs that you have, or is it like minimum wage, or?
It's not. You work so many hours. I don't know how many hours it figures out. I think that each school would be a little bit different, but it depends on how many hours you can work. They're not going to have you working too many hours. It's not like you can come up with $10,000 a year doing work on campus. It's not going to happen. It's they want to make sure you're balancing out your schoolwork also.
Well, sometimes to pay for college, it costs more than $10,000 a year. So, like, how would you pay for it while working during school?
Well, usually you can't work too much. If you work too much, you're not going to get any. You're not going to get as much financial aid. So it's kind of one of those things that it's a lose-lose sort of situation. If school costs $10,000, sometimes you can get money, to pay part of that. It's also depending on what your parents have to contribute. The equation is actually the cost of attendance minus the family contribution, and that's not what your family wants to pay for college, it's what the government says they can afford equals need. So, for example, if it's a $10,000 school and the government says your family contribution is $5,000, you show $5,000 worth of need. Some of those schools meet it at 100%, so all you're going to have to do is come up with that $5,000. Just because a school says it's, for example, $40,000, it doesn't mean necessarily you will have to pay all $40,000 to go there.
So, like you're saying, you could go to like Harvard for $5,000, or?
Depending on your situation. Not everybody can go to Harvard for $5,000. It's depending on, income and assets and information like that. And, what's your GPA? What's your SAT? Are you getting some merit-based financial aid? Each person's going to be a little bit different. What, works for one family is not going to work for the other family. $5,000 is just an easy number for me to work with. Some people's family contribution can be, I've seen it at $75,000, meaning they don't have to pay $75,000. It just means they're not getting any need-based financial aid. They would pretty much have to pay it out of pocket.
So, for the need-based, what if you don't have the money to pay for it, right? And they don't meet 100% of need. How do you find that little bit of extra money?
That's a great question, actually. Well, say the school only meets 50% of need. You have to come up with the other 50%. Your new family contribution, for example, let's use that same equation. $10,000 for school, your family contribution is $5,000. You show $5,000 worth of need. Well, if they meet it at 50%, they're going to meet $2,500 of it. The other $2,500 is added back onto your family contribution. That school now costs you $7,500. There's a lot of schools out there that don't meet 100% of need. There's schools out there that meet 60, 70% of need, and all of a sudden it becomes a lot more out of pocket.
So, but you don't have that money, so like how do you
Well, they figure that you're going to come up with either a loan to pay for the school. There is a PLUS loan out there to pay for every cost of a college education. Maybe a Stafford loan. That unfortunately, not all the schools have that backing. Example, you mentioned Harvard. Harvard has a lot of free money to give out, actually. The last statistic I saw in Harvard is they could send every single child there to school for free and never touch the principal. So they have a lot of free money at Harvard. But if you're looking at a state school, or they're not going to have as much money. They don't have a huge endowment fund like some of the private universities do.
Where does the money come from Harvard? Do they just save it up and they didn't never spend it?
Alumni. There's, they have strong alumni at those schools where, they give back to the school, and that's where the huge endowment funds come in. State schools don't have the backing, they don't have the alumni.
So it sounds like the private schools have more money to give away.
Normally they do, actually. They, as I said, they are the ones with the huge endowment funds. That money is usually given out in merit-based financial aid. If you fall in the top 25% of the incoming class based on, the SAT or ACT score and your GPA, you're looking at a lot of free money. The one thing is that money is given out on a first-come, first-served basis each year, meaning you need to make sure you're at the front of the line. The first day you can turn your FAFSA form in is January 1st. You want to get as close to January 1st because it's going to be given out on a first-come, first-served basis.
That's interesting. So, in a sense, so do private schools give more percentage of need, or is it that public schools give more? Or?
I've seen public schools meet 100% of need. I've seen, private schools sometimes meet 70% of need. It's all on the school, actually. And I wish there was a system for figuring out all private schools give 100% of need, but it doesn't work that way. Even each one of the Cal State schools meet a different percentage of need.
So, for example, UCLA.
UCLA would probably meet, I'm going to guess it's about 95 to 100% of need. But the thing is, they're not going to meet as much in gift aid a lot of times. You also have to look at not just the percentage of need met, you need to look at the percentage of gift aid and percentage of self-help. Because a school can meet 100% of need, but if they meet 30% in gift aid and 70% in loans, for example, you're getting a lot of loans to go to that school, not a lot of free money. Yes, they're going to meet your need, but unfortunately, they're going to meet it with loans.
No, as far as work on campus doesn't that interfere with your schoolwork? I mean, let's say you're going to a tough college. I mean,
you do not have to, just because your financial aid award grants you work study or work on campus doesn't mean you have to accept it. But they're not also going to give you a 40-hour work week because there'd be no way you could get your studying done, get to class, and work. It's going to be, not very many hours. They're not going to give you too much. That's why you can also decline it. You could also just say, no, I don't want any of the work study.
So you can take all in loans?
If you wanted to. I would always say most families I meet with want to know how much free money they're going to get. How many grants, grant being free money. They usually want to hear about that first. The second thing they don't want to hear about is loans. Usually families tell me, Kim, I don't want any of those loans, I just want that free money. But the statistic is over 80% of parents borrow at least some portion of the college education these days.
There are parents that don't?
There are some parents that don't. There are some parents that get, very seldom, there are people out there that get a free ride to school. Or there's the parents that just pay for it outright that decide not to take out the loans. If you're getting a portion in free money, then sometimes the parents could pay the other portion off and just not take out a loan. There are some great money, a subsidized loan, in which the government's paying the interest on it the entire time they're in school. Your money would earn more money in the bank, low interest rate and still earning money. You could pay that off at the end. A subsidized loan is never a bad way to borrow money. The subsidized loans, the government pays the interest the entire time the child is in school, plus a 6-month grace period afterwards. So you don't have to worry about the interest accruing. If you took out a loan for $10,000, when they got out of school and 6 months later, it'd still be $10,000. The interest wouldn't be added on. If you took an unsubsidized loan, if you got offered one of those, in that case it'd be $10,000 plus the interest added on.
So it's like an interest-free loan as long as you pay on time?
Well, it's an interest-free loan for the time that they're in school. The government's paying the interest on it. Then, after the 6 month, the interest comes back to you. You have to start. it's going to start to accrue at that point. But the government is nice enough to pay the interest on it the entire time the child's in school.
So, let me make sure if I understand this correctly. So when you get out of school, then the interest comes on, but is it higher than normal interest to make up for what you didn't pay for before?
No, it's at the interest rate, the going interest rate at that time. So no, it's not that they don't make you pay more in interest because the government paid the interest on it.
So if you have a subsidized loan and you pay the interest back before the 6-month period is over, it's an interest-free loan?
If you paid off the whole $10,000, you could look at it that way, yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a good way to do it.
That is a good way to do it. That would be a great way to do it.
All right, so how easy is that to get? I mean, how do you...
Well, those are based on, it's a need-based loan, the subsidized loan. It's based on, what your parents make. So if they get offered it, it's great. It's not a guarantee that you're going to be offered a subsidized loan. If you get offered an unsubsidized loan, it's going to still be at a low interest rate.
So it's like a need-based loan?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. So what are the, you say low interest rates, like what are the interest rates?
Last year it was a 4.86%, I believe, which was an all-time low.
Well, I don't know the value of a dollar. For kids out there, not parents, what's regular interest?
If you were looking at a credit card, a lot of times, credit cards are anywhere between 14, 21%. So that's actually a much better way than putting it on your credit card.
Huh. Is there a way to use that kind of loan outside for paying for stuff outside of college?
Well, when you get it, you get to decide. If you have so much left, I guess you could use it for living expenses. I know people that have done that. I don't say that's necessarily the best way to use it. If you don't use it, you should maybe leave it in the bank so you can pay it off. But there are people that use it, for food, for, living on campus there and things like that. Okay,
so to get all this aid, how do you go about like qualifying or what have you?
The first thing you need to do is fill out the FAFSA form. The FAFSA form is the free application for federal student aid. Unfortunately, that form is just not that easy to fill out these days. Last year, the statistic was 90% of parents filled it out incorrectly. Basically, that FAFSA form is the gatekeeper for all financial aid. No FAFSA form, no need-based financial aid, no merit-based financial aid, no athletic scholarships, no federal loans. That form has to be turned in on time and correctly. The next form that you'd have to fill out would be the profile form. The profile form is for those private institutions. Not every private school requires this profile form, but there are 350 schools in the United States that do. And that profile form, you have to register for it. Then you get the form sent to you and you have to fill it out. It's a little more evasive than the FAFSA form. It's going to ask about assets, home equity, retirement accounts. Usually the schools that require that profile form have a little bit more free money to give out, so they want to know a little bit more about you. Besides that, there are institutional forms pertaining to financial aid. Those forms, when you send off the admissions applications, they're going to send you back their own set of financial aid paperwork. And so the same information that went on the FAFSA form has to go on the profile form and the institutional forms pertaining to financial aid. A lot of times that's where mistakes happen between those three forms. If the same information doesn't go on there, you're going to either A, lose money, or B, get the form kicked back to you. If you get the form kicked back to you, it's not 1 to 2 weeks later. They send it back to you 4 to 6 weeks later. If you turned it in January, you're okay. You turn it in February, by the time it gets back to you, you can miss some deadlines. March 2nd is the deadline for federal and state money. If you get your form kicked back to you after that, you're going to lose a lot of money. The problem is a lot of parents don't have the time to become an expert in financial aid. So they try to fill out the forms and they're not sure if they fill them out 100% correct. That's where a lot of parents lose money. Last year there was $79.86 billion in financial aid to give out. 70% of the money went unclaimed. Actually over 70%, because parents didn't fill out the forms correctly.
Where's the money now?
It's a great question. Money goes for the following year. No, they won't give out the money unless you fill out the form correctly and on time. I'll give a specific case. My parents, went to fill out the forms. They looked at them probably and decided no. Their friends told them they made too much money to qualify for financial aid. They didn't fill them out. Well, my dad lost his job my freshman year in college. No incoming money, you think you could somehow get some financial aid. So I went to the financial aid officer at the school and asked them what I could do, and they asked me if I filled out the FAFSA form. I was 18. I had no idea what the FAFSA form was. No FAFSA form, no financial aid. We got 0 financial aid even though my dad lost his job. It's probably a big reason why I do what I do today. I thought I was leaving school.
Oh, that sucks. Oh. All right, well, so we're talking complicated forms here. What does that mean? Like, how many pages of a form here?
That's several forms, and there's still even additional forms after that. After you turn those forms in, there's income and asset verification forms. There's questionnaires that come back after the profile form. If you own your own business, they're going to give you some more forms. They reward you for being the backbone of America by giving you some more forms to fill out. If you're divorced, that's another form that you could possibly have to fill out. The non-custodial parent, the parent that the child doesn't live with. Sometimes they want to know a little bit about the non-custodial parent. So, I mean, the forms, it depends. You apply to one school or, one profile form, or it could be, if you apply to 10 to 12 schools, I say to always apply to at least 6 schools. If you don't, it's going to cut your financial aid a little bit. So now you're thinking not just one school, now you have, say, 10 schools. You're going to see a stack of forms.
Wow.
But each school is a little bit different. Their financial aid forms, their institutional forms pertaining to financial aid are different at each school. It's not the same forms. If you're applying to UC Santa Barbara and UCLA, you're going to get 2 sets of forms.
So we're talking literally hundreds of forms or hundreds of pages.
I wouldn't say hundreds of pages, but
Well,
it's a lot of pages of work.
Okay. So what kind of things go into to consider, like, what kind of things do you have to fill out that determine how much aid you get? Like,
Well, for the FAFSA form, they basically almost strictly look into income. They do look into assets, but there's some accounts that they don't look at. For the profile form, they're going to look at income, they're going to look at assets, how much money you have in the bank, how much is in a savings, how much is in an IRA, how much is in a retirement account. In addition, they're going to look into home equity. How much is your home worth? How much home equity do you have in it? In addition, what's in your retirement accounts? The worst thing you can do from a financial aid standpoint is probably pay off your house. You're going to have a lot of home equity. Then I would say probably to look at a school that uses just the FAFSA form, because that FAFSA form doesn't look into retirement accounts. It doesn't look into home equity. So you can always kind of play it between those 2 forms. You just need to know which school requires which form. As I said, not every private school requires the profile form. For example, Pepperdine, University of San Diego don't require that profile form.
But most of them do?
The big name schools are going to require it. We talked about Harvard, Stanford, USC. They're all going to require that form.
Are there changes in the form, or has it stayed the same over the years?
No, the form changes every single year. There's always an update to the form. So, no, they're not nice enough not to change the form. And, I mean, it's just a very vague form. And a lot of times, for example, parents don't know, should they put their home value? Should they put it high? Should they put it low? So parents a lot of times will write different home values on different forms. That's where they start losing some money.
I see. So if they change it every year, does the amount of people who get it wrong increase or decrease?
I don't know what the statistic is going to be this year, but the statistic is usually pretty close. It's going to be, 90% of parents fill it out incorrectly. Reason being, they don't take the time to become an expert in financial aid. Most parents, for example, go and get their taxes done because they're not an expert in taxes. But this is the same thing. You need to take the time to become an expert in financial aid. There's some great books you can read on financial aid. If you picked up the newspaper any day right now, you're going to see an article on college funding. They need to be reading those articles and deciding, is this going to be something that works for them?
All right. So But the money is there. The money is in the government, and it's like waiting. They're probably like begging to give it away.
Oh, they're not begging to give it
No?
away.
Well,
I mean, you have to fill out the forms correctly and on time. No, if you don't turn the forms in correctly and on time, they're not gonna go, oh, okay, slap on the wrist and end up handing out the money. No, they just don't give it out. I mean, I've seen someone get their FAFSA form turned back to them 3 times because they didn't fill it out correctly, and all it said was, you're missing something.
Huh. Well, the money is out there, so fill those forms out correctly.
To the tables down at Maurice, to the place where Louis dwells, to the dear old temple bar we love so well. Sing the Whiffen Booths assembled with their glasses raised on high, and the magic of their singing cast its spell. Yes, the magic of their singing, of the songs we love so well. Shall I wasting and Mavourneen and the rest? We will serenade our Louis while life and voice shall last. Then we'll pass and be forgotten with the rest. We are poor little lambs who have lost our way, but